we come with Jay, the part with Jay. I go, oh shoot, like
to us,
that had to be there.
We getting tighter, you know what I'm saying? And united we stand, and ain't nothing else.
Black excellence, they're sitting there like, yeah. It's the billionaire brunch. Like,
I hate you, man.
Unaware of anything going on here. This is the one time I'm gonna be with you this year. Come on, bro.
The internet didn't just blink this week, it choked on its own popcorn. 1 minute everyone's still digesting the Diddy prison drama. The next minute 50 Cent is smirking again, Instagram fingers itching. And suddenly the timeline is screaming one question, like it's the season finale cliffhanger nobody was ready for. Is JayZ next, or is the internet just bored and violent with Wi-Fi? Because according to online whispers, leaked chatter, and sources familiar with the vibes, a Netflix documentary might be circling like a shark that just smelled celebrity blood. This isn't breaking news, it's breaking nerves. Screenshots are flying, podcasts are hyperventilating, and conspiracy threads are multiplying faster than Kardashian's launching skincare brands. 50 Cent doesn't even need to say much anymore. He just posts a caption and lets chaos do the rest. Every emoji feels like a threat, every laugh feels calculated, and suddenly JayZ's name is trending next to words nobody ever wants to trend next to. This isn't journalism. It's internet warfare, allegedly, supposedly, according to the timeline that hasn't slept in 3 days. And the wild part? Netflix hasn't denied a thing. Which in internet law is basically a drum roll. The moment the Diddy prison drama hit the internet, the culture didn't mourn it refreshed. And while everyone else was still arguing timelines, court language and legal definitions they barely understood. One man was already 10 steps ahead, smiling like a chess player who just sacrificed a pawn to expose the king. 50 Cent didn't break the story. He didn't need to. He simply hovered over it like a storm cloud that knows thunder is optional when fear does the work for you. One cryptic post, one laugh emoji placed a little too perfectly, and suddenly the internet decided this wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of the sequel nobody ordered, but everybody secretly wanted. Because here's the thing about 50 Cent. When he smells weakness in the culture, he doesn't attack directly. He lets the internet do what it does best, connect dots that may or may not exist. Then argue about them until exhaustion feels like truth. As Diddy's situation spiraled, timelines lit up with the same question whispered in different fonts. If one titan can fall, who's next? And that's when JayZ's name started floating through the algorithm like a ghost nobody invited but everyone noticed. Not because of evidence. Not because of charges. But because silence plus speculation equals chaos in the attention economy. The alleged Netflix documentary rumor didn't arrive with a trailer or a press release. It leaked the way the most dangerous stories always do, through vibes, whispers, and people who swear they heard something. Someone screenshots a DM. Someone else claims a producer friend mentioned a project. A reaction channel titles a video like it's already confirmed. And suddenly the phrase Netflix doc becomes less of a question and more of a threat. Netflix doesn't say yes. Netflix doesn't say no. And in internet logic, that's practically a drumroll wrapped in suspense music. What made this moment combustible wasn't just the rumor itself. It was the timing. Hip-hop royalty has always lived above consequence in the public imagination, protected by legacy, wealth, and a carefully polished mythos. JayZ isn't just an artist. He's a symbol, a businessman, a blueprint. The idea that his name could even be mentioned in the same breath as Expose made some fans defensive enough to write essays and others excited enough to open popcorn. That split is where chaos lives. And 50 Cent knows that better than anyone. He's been here before. Every time the culture thinks it's safe, he reminds everyone that history has footnotes nobody reads until it's too late. His online persona isn't reckless. It's surgical. He doesn't accuse, he suggests. He doesn't expose, he frames. And when he laughs, it feels like he already knows how the episode ends. That's why people took his silence more seriously than a press conference. Because when 50 goes quiet during a controversy, it doesn't feel like restraint. It feels like confidence. The internet, of course, did what it always does when left unsupervised. Old interviews resurfaced. Lyrics were dissected like legal transcripts. Business deals were suddenly questionable. Friendships were labeled suspicious. It didn't matter that none of it was new. Context is optional when outrage is trending. Fans and critics alike started speaking in hypotheticals that sounded dangerously close to conclusions. Every sentence began with allegedly but ended with certainty. That's how modern scandals are built brick by brick, rumor by rumor, until perception feels heavier than proof. And then there was the Netflix factor. Because Netflix isn't just a platform. It's a stamp of cultural doom. The moment its name enters a rumor, people assume cameras are already rolling and lawyers are already sweating. Netflix documentaries have trained audiences to expect jaw-dropping twists, ominous narration, and a villain arc by episode 3. So when people whispered that Netflix might be circling hip-hop's elite, it wasn't about truth anymore. It was about expectation. People weren't asking if a documentary existed. They were asking what episode JayZ would appear in. Meanwhile, JayZ himself stayed silent. No tweets, no statements, no clever bars. And silence, in moments like this, is interpreted in every possible way except neutrality. Supporters called it class. Critics called it avoidance. The algorithm called it engagement bait. Because every hour without a response fed the story another heartbeat. Silence became the loudest sound in the room. And 50 Cent? Still smiling somewhere. Letting the internet argue with itself like a courtroom with no judge. What made this situation feel different from typical? Celebrity rumor cycles was the tone of the conversation. This wasn't playful gossip. This was anticipatory. Like people were bracing for impact before anything even hit. Comment sections read like prediction markets. Reaction videos felt rehearsed. Even defenses sounded pre-written. The culture wasn't reacting to information. It was reacting to the possibility of revelation. That's a dangerous place to live, because once the idea of a downfall exists, it never really goes away even if nothing ever happens. And let's be clear, no evidence dropped. No documentary trailer leaked. No official accusations surfaced. But that didn't slow the momentum. Because modern scandals don't need facts to move. They need narratives, and narratives were being built at warp speed. The idea that something is coming became enough to reshape conversations, plant doubt, and redraw alliances. People started choosing sides before knowing what game was being played. This is the moment where everything hangs in the balance. Not because of what's proven, but because of what's implied. The culture stands at the edge of a rumor cliff, staring into fog, convinced it hears thunder. And the scariest part? Everyone knows that even if nothing happens, the damage might already be done. Because in the age of viral speculation, perception isn't just reality, it's a preview of consequences. And as the noise grew louder, one question refused to go away. If this really is just internet imagination running wild, why does it feel like everyone involved is waiting for something? Why does the silence feel staged? Why does the rumor refuse to die? Because whether this turns into a full-blown expose or fizzles out like yesterday's outrage, one thing is already clear. The culture has entered a phase where legends aren't immune anymore. They're just next in line. By the time the rumor reached full speed, it wasn't even about JayZ anymore. It was about what the internet wanted him to represent. Every scandal needs a symbol, and the timeline decided this one needed a crown. Suddenly, JayZ wasn't just a rapper or a mogul. He was the final boss in a Netflix season nobody could stop pitching. And the wildest part? Nobody officially said his name in connection to anything real. The internet did that all on its own. Like a self-driving conspiracy with no brakes and unlimited WI-V. Memes hit first, because memes always hit first. JayZ's face got photoshopped into fake Netflix. Thumbnails with dramatic red lighting and titles that sounded like rejected true crime podcasts. People joked about Episode 4, The Billionaire Room, and Episode 6, Silence Speaks Louder. It was funny until it wasn't, because once humor enters the conversation, seriousness follows wearing a disguise. Jokes lower defenses. Jokes make people listen. And jokes are how the internet tests ideas before treating them like truth. Reaction channels jumped in like it was Black Friday for outrage. Some acted shocked, others pretended they'd been waiting years to say this. And a few just screamed into microphones for 10 minutes straight because volume apparently equals credibility. Every clip used the same ingredients: dramatic pauses, widened eyes, phrases like "connect the dots," and "think about it." No dots were actually connected, but nobody cared. The audience didn't want answers. They wanted confirmation of suspicion. That's how speculation evolves into belief without ever stopping at evidence. Celebrities didn't help either. A vague tweet here, a side-eye emoji there, a "truth always comes out" post with no subject attached. That's all it takes to fuel a fire when the crowd is already holding gasoline. Some artists played Switzerland, saying nothing but posting selfies like the world wasn't on fire. Others leaned in just enough to stay relevant without committing to anything real. Silence became strategy. Ambiguity became currency. Everyone understood the rules of the moment. Say enough to trend, not enough to be sued. Enough to trend, not enough to be sued. And then there was 50 Cent, watching the chaos like a director reviewing dailies. He didn't escalate directly. He didn't need to. The internet was already doing free promo for whatever narrative it wanted. His history made every laugh feel intentional. This is the same man who treats beef like episodic television, who understands that anticipation does more damage than confrontation. When he posted anything unrelated, people still read it like subtext. A photo became a message. A joke became a warning. He didn't push the boulder. He stood near the hill and let gravity work. Pop culture comparisons got out of control. Because when people don't have facts, they reach for metaphors. This was called hip-hop's Succession moment. Its House of Cards arc, its end of the Empire season. People said it made the Kardashians look like daytime television, and made reality shows seem underwritten. The drama felt cinematic even though nothing had been filmed. That's the power of narrative hunger. Audiences raised on documentaries now expect every powerful figure to have a hidden episode waiting to drop. Public outrage didn't even agree on what it was outraged about. Some people were mad at the idea that JayZ could be questioned at all. Others were mad that he hadn't been questioned sooner. The debate split into camps that talked past each other, each convinced the other side was either blind or malicious. That division kept the story alive. Because controversy without consensus never dies, it just mutates. Every argument generated 10 more videos, 20 more threads, 100 more comments. Engagement fed itself like a snake eating likes. What made this phase dangerous wasn't accusation. It was expectation management. People started talking as if a documentary was inevitable, as if an expose was already edited and cued. Netflix's name became a character in the story, looming without ever speaking. In the streaming era, denial feels weaker than silence, and silence feels louder than confirmation. The platform's reputation did the work for it. Audiences assumed if Netflix was mentioned, something serious had to exist somewhere. Even if only as an idea in someone's head, JayZ's brand, built over decades, suddenly felt like a glass skyscraper in a hailstorm of speculation. Not cracking, not shattering, just making everyone stare upward, waiting for the first window to break. Every past business move got reinterpreted through a suspicious lens. Neutral events were reframed as foreshadowing. Success itself became suspicious, because in scandal culture, power always looks guilty before proven otherwise. The louder the noise grew, the harder it became to separate critique from craving, and the audience. The audience wasn't passive. They were casting the story in real time. Who would speak first? Who would defend? Who would disappear? They debated what a hypothetical documentary would include. Who would narrate it? What music would play under the dramatic pauses? They imagined scenes that didn't exist yet. That's when speculation becomes participatory. At that point, truth isn't needed. Imagination fills the gaps with confidence. This is where modern celebrity culture becomes brutal. You don't need to fall to feel the fall. You just need enough people to imagine it. Algorithms reward intensity, not accuracy. The loudest interpretation wins the spotlight. And once a name trends in the wrong context long enough, It leaves a residue that doesn't wash off easily. Even if nothing drops, something shifts. Conversations change tone. Jokes land differently. Silence feels heavier. By now, the story wasn't asking if something was real. It was daring someone to prove it wasn't. That's an impossible challenge. Because you can't disprove a rumor that thrives on absence. You can't argue with vibes. You can't debate anticipation. The culture had already decided this was a moment, and moments don't ask permission. They just happen, and as the noise peaked, one uncomfortable truth sat beneath all the memes and outrage. This wasn't about guilt or innocence. It was about appetite. The internet wanted another chapter. Another titan. Another unraveling. And whether this story ends with revelation or embarrassment, the hunger that created it isn't going anywhere. Eventually. Every internet storm reaches the same eerie phase, the moment where nothing new happens but everything feels different. No trailer drops. No charges appear. No documentary suddenly premieres at midnight. And yet the culture doesn't reset. It recalibrates. Because once a name has been dragged through speculation long enough, it doesn't snap back to normal. It just exists in a new, slightly altered version of reality. That's where this story lands, not with a bang, but with a quiet shift that only gets louder over time. JayZ didn't lose his empire. He didn't cancel appearances. He didn't disappear. But something subtle changed. The way people talked. The way jokes landed. The way silence was interpreted. Power doesn't evaporate overnight. It leaks. And public trust, once questioned even unfairly, never fully returns to factory settings. That's the cost of living in an era where rumor moves faster than fact. And perception travels lighter than proof. This is the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to admit. You don't need to be exposed to be affected. You just need to be imagined as exposable. The culture starts treating legends differently once the word documentary enters the chat. Suddenly, achievements are reread with suspicion. Longevity becomes too long. Influence becomes too quiet. Success starts sounding like something that needs explaining. That's how narratives work. They don't accuse directly. They are E.50 Cent, meanwhile walks away clean as ever. Because his role was never to confirm or deny. His role was to remind the culture that nothing is untouchable anymore, not myths. Not moguls, not billionaires wrapped in legacy branding. He doesn't burn bridges. He points at the cracks and lets the audience imagine the collapse. That's why he never looks worried in moments like this. He understands that the real damage isn't done by statements. It's done by anticipation. The funniest part, if funny is still the right word, is how quickly the internet moves on while pretending it didn't. Another scandal trends. Another name gets whispered. Another outrage takes center stage. But this story doesn't disappear. It just gets archived in the collective memory, ready to be reopened the next time JayZ trends for any reason at all. That's how modern legacies erode, not in explosions, but in bookmarks. Netflix never confirmed anything. Never denied anything. And somehow that was enough to cement its name permanently into the rumor itself. That's the paradox of silence in the streaming age. Saying nothing feels strategic, but it also lets the audience finish the script for you. People now speak about a documentary like it exists in a parallel universe, maybe not released, but inevitable. That idea alone reshapes expectations. The next interview JayZ gives won't be heard the same way. The next business move will be dissected twice as hard. That's consequence without conviction. And here's the part nobody wants to confront. The culture likes this. It feeds on the idea that no one is above the algorithm. That every throne has a receipt somewhere. That every success story might have a director's cut. This hunger isn't about justice. It's about entertainment dressed up as accountability. It's about turning real people into episodic content and calling it truth-seeking. That doesn't make it harmless. It makes it profitable. What we witnessed wasn't an expose. It was a dress rehearsal. A test run for how fast a narrative can be built without confirmation, how easily a legacy can be nudged into question, how silence can be weaponized by both sides at once. JayZ didn't lose anything tangible. But he gained something intangible that's harder to shake, a permanent asterisk in certain corners of the internet. They are not earned or imagined. That's how these cycles end. And the most dangerous part, the crowd doesn't feel responsible. Because nobody technically accused anyone. Everyone hid behind allegedly, if true, and just asking questions. Responsibility dissolves when rumor is distributed evenly. No single voice owns the narrative, but everyone participates in it. That's how reputations get weathered by 1,000 small cuts instead of one big blow. As the noise fades, the culture pretends this was just another viral moment. But legends notice these shifts. They feel them in rooms that get quieter, conversations that change tone, partnerships that suddenly require more reassurance. Power is still there, but it's no longer invisible. And when power becomes visible, it becomes targetable. This story doesn't end with answers because it was never really asking questions. It ends with a warning disguised as entertainment. A reminder that in this era, nobody waits for facts before forming conclusions, and nobody needs proof to feel satisfied. The internet doesn't demand truth. It demands content. So whether a documentary ever exists or not almost becomes irrelevant. The damage or the shift has already occurred. The culture has proven it's willing to imagine the fall of anyone, and imagination is the most dangerous force of all. Because once people picture something enough times, they start expecting it, and expectation is the first step toward rewriting history. And now that you've survived this episode of Internet Chaos, let's be honest, this story isn't over, it's just buffering. Because scandals don't end anymore. They pause until the algorithm needs them again. So if you're sitting there thinking, nah, this feels unfinished, congratulations, you're paying attention. That's how these sagas work. Paying attention. That's how these sagas work. One rumor today, one reaction tomorrow, and suddenly the timeline acts like it knew everything all along. So do me a favor. Smash that like button like it owes you money and keeps dodging your calls. Drop a comment and tell me what you think. Do you believe this is just internet imagination running wild? Or do you think something bigger is loading behind the scenes? No safe answers, no fence sitting. Say it with your chest. The comment section is where the real investigation happens. And if you're new here, hit subscribe before the next scandal hits without warning. Because trust me, these stories don't come with calendars. They drop randomly, violently, and usually at the worst possible time, just like the internet likes it. One day it's silence. The next day it's trending everywhere and everybody acts shocked. This channel doesn't wait for permission, press releases, or polite conversations. We break down the rumors, the reactions, the power moves, and the culture's obsession with watching giants wobble. Not because we claim to know everything, but because ignoring the noise never makes it disappear. So stay locked in. Turn on notifications. Because whether it's JayZ, Netflix, 50 Cent, or the next name nobody expects, you already know how this goes.